If you fix that Ferrari, you can marry my daughter." The mechanic's apprentice laughed at the heiress. The midday sun beat down relentlessly on the small Hermano Serrano mechanics shop on the outskirts of Madrid. Victor was wiping his grease-stained hands with an old rag when suddenly a deafening roar broke the tranquility of the neighborhood, and a blood-red Ferrari pulled up in front of the shop with its engine smoking. "My God," Victor murmured, feeling his heart race. An elegant woman of about 45 years of age stepped out of the Ferrari, dressed in a designer suit that cost more than Victor earned in a year. Her cold, contemptuous eyes scanned the humble workshop as if it were the first time she had ever seen poverty. "Are you the mechanic?" asked Christina Gonzalez with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Yes, ma'am. Victor Serrano, at your service," he replied, nervously drying his hands. Christina laughed with disdain, a laugh that made his blood run cold. "My Ferrari broke down in the middle of the highway. The mechanics at the dealership say it needs special parts that will take weeks to arrive." Victor approached the vehicle, his eyes shining with a passion that Christina did not expect to see in a simple neighborhood mechanic. "Let me take a look, ma'am." At that moment, a young woman got out of the passenger seat. Carmen Gonzalez was 23 years old, with brown hair that danced in the breeze and eyes that held secrets. She was beautiful, but there was something sad in her gaze, as if she carried the weight of the world on her shoulders. "Mom, let's go. This place can't fix a Ferrari," Carmen whispered. Although her eyes couldn't look away from Victor, Christina smiled mischievously. She had noticed how her daughter was looking at the young mechanic. "You know what, young man?" Christina said, raising her voice so that everyone in the shop could hear. "I'll make you a bet." Time stood still. The other mechanics put down their tools. Carmen frowned, sensing something terrible. "If you manage to fix my Ferrari," Christina paused dramatically, "you marry my daughter." A deadly silence invaded the workshop. Carmen turned pale as a sheet. "Mom," she cried, mortified. Victor felt the blood rush to his cheeks. The humiliation burned like acid in his chest. "And if you can't fix it," Christina continued, enjoying the spectacle, "you admit that people like you can never aspire to anything greater." The words hit Victor like punches, but then something ignited inside him, a flame that had lain dormant for years. "I accept," he said firmly, looking Christina straight in the eye. Carmen looked at him with a mixture of horror and admiration. "But I have one condition," Victor added. "Give me 30 minutes. If I fix it, you keep your word." Christina burst out laughing. 30 minutes. The best mechanics in Madrid said it was impossible without the original parts. 30 minutes, Victor repeated, and for the first time in a long time, he felt completely alive. The die had been cast. The clock started ticking, and no one, absolutely no one, was prepared for what was about to happen. As Victor walked toward the Ferrari, memories hit him like an avalanche. 20 years ago, Victor was 5 years old. His father, Eduardo Serrano, came home with tears in his eyes after being fired from the Gonzalez Motors Company. "They accused us of theft, son. 20 years working for them, and they threw us out like dogs," his father had said, hugging him tightly. Victor shook his head. This was no time for the past. He knelt down next to the Ferrari's engine and began to examine each component with the precision of a surgeon. Carmen approached timidly. "You don't have to do this," she whispered. "My mother sometimes says terrible things. She doesn't know you." Victor looked up. Carmen's eyes were different from her mother's. They were warm, genuine. "And you?" he asked. "Do you also think that people like me can't aspire to something greater?" Carmen remained silent, but her gaze said it all. There was pain there and loneliness. "I don't think like my mother," she finally murmured. Victor nodded and returned to the engine. His hands moved with a dexterity that surprised even the most experienced mechanics in the workshop. There was something almost magical about the way he understood machines. 15 minutes, Christina shouted, checking her watch. "Rolex, you've given up, boy." But Victor was in his element. He had identified the problem, a fault in the injection system that required a specific repair without the original parts. He would have to improvise. With precise movements, he began to dismantle parts from other vehicles in the workshop. His fellow mechanics watched him in amazement. What he was doing was impossible. Carmen watched, fascinated. There was something hypnotic about watching Victor work. His muscles tensed under his grease-stained t-shirt. His forehead glistened with sweat. But his eyes shone with a determination she had never seen before. "Why are you doing this?" she asked him quietly without stopping work. Victor replied, "Because all my life I've been told that I'm not good enough, that people like me have to settle for crumbs." His words were so painful that Carmen felt her heart shrink. 10 minutes, Christina shouted again, but now there was less certainty in her voice. The young mechanic was accomplishing things that seemed impossible. Victor connected the last cable. Her heart was beating so loudly that she thought everyone could hear it. Carmen said without looking at her, "Could you start the engine?" She looked at him in surprise. "Yes, if it's going to work, I want you to be the one to find out." Carmen felt something strange in her chest. No one had ever asked her to be part of something important. She was always just a decoration in her mother's life. She climbed into the Ferrari with trembling hands. Victor looked at her with an intensity that made her feel special. 5 minutes, Christina shouted, but her voice sounded nervous. Carmen put her hand on the ignition key. The whole world seemed to be holding its breath, and then the roar of the Ferrari filled the air like a perfect symphony. The engine was running better than before. Cristina Gonzalez was speechless for the first time in her life. Victor Serrano stood up slowly, wiping his hands. A small but victorious smile appeared on his lips. 30 minutes, he said, looking directly at Cristina. As I promised, the silence that followed was deafening, and Carmen looked at him as if she were seeing the most extraordinary man in the world. Because perhaps she was. Cristina Gonzalez had lost for the first time in decades. Someone had achieved something she considered impossible. The perfect roar of the Ferrari was undeniable proof that Victor Serrano was much more than just a neighborhood mechanic. This is impossible, she muttered, approaching the vehicle in disbelief. The best technicians in Europe said it needed original parts, Victor interrupted, calmly wiping his hands. They were right, but sometimes there are other ways to achieve the same result. Carmen got out of the Ferrari, trembling not with fear, but with something she couldn't name. Admiration, perhaps, or something deeper. "Victor, she began to say. "A bet is a bet," Christina said sharply, regaining her composure. "But obviously when I said you would marry my daughter, it was a joke, a way of joking." Victor's voice was dangerously calm. "Humiliating me in front of everyone was just a joke." Christina's eyes hardened. "Listen to me carefully, young man. You may be very skilled with machines, but that doesn't change who you are. Carmen is destined to marry someone of her social class, someone who can offer her the future she deserves." "And what future is that?" Carmen asked suddenly, surprising everyone. "Marry some boring businessman who sees me as a trophy? Live in a gilded cage for the rest of my life?" "Carmen," her mother roared, "don't talk like that. You have responsibilities to the family, to the empire I built for you. An empire you built by trampling on families like Victor's." Carmen exploded. The silence that followed was deadly. Christina turned pale. "What? What did you say?" Carmen looked at Victor, then at her mother. "Do you think I don't know how you run your business, Mom? Do you think I don't know about all the families you've destroyed to get where you are?" Victor felt as if a knife had been stabbed into his chest. Carmen knew about his father, about what the Gonzalez family had done to him. Christina approached her daughter, her eyes burning with anger. "Let's go right now. This place is filling your head with dangerous ideas." "No," said Carmen, surprising herself with the firmness of her voice. "I'm not leaving. Excuse me? I said I'm not leaving. You made a bet, Mom, and you lost." Christina laughed bitterly. "Seriously, do you think I'm going to let my daughter marry this?" The word "this" hit Victor like a slap in the face, but before he could respond, Carmen stepped forward. "His name is Victor, and he's worth more than all the empty businessmen you want me to marry." "Enough!" Christina shouted. "I forbid you to see this man again. You can't forbid me anything." I'm 23 years old. Mother and daughter stared at each other like gladiators in an arena. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Victor knew he had to intervene. Carmen said softly, "Your mother is right about one thing. We come from different worlds. Maybe it's better this way." Carmen turned to him with eyes full of tears. "Don't you dare give up now. Not after what you just did." Their eyes met. At that moment, Victor saw something in Carmen's eyes that changed everything. It wasn't pity. It wasn't teenage rebellion. It was love. Real, pure, honest love. Christina saw the connection between them and felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Real fear. "If you take one more step toward my daughter," she said to Victor in a venomous voice, "I will destroy your little workshop. I will destroy your life and that of your family. I will sink you so deep that you will never be able to get out, Mom," Carmen whispered in horror. But Victor did not back down. Instead, he took a step forward. "You already destroyed my family once, Mrs. Gonzalez. My father worked for you for 20 years, 20 years of loyalty, and you fired him, accusing him of being a thief to cover up your own mistakes." Christina froze. You are Eduardo Serrano, my father. And yes, Mrs. Gonzalez, I know exactly who you are." Carmen's world collapsed around her. Everything was starting to make sense. The way Victor looked at her, his determination, his pain. Victor whispered all this time. He looked at her with eyes filled with infinite sadness. "I'm sorry, Carmen. I didn't want you to find out this way." Christina laughed hysterically. "This is perfect, absolutely perfect. My own daughter in love with the son of the thief who almost destroyed my company." "My father was not a thief," Victor roared. "Oh no. Then explain to me how $50,000 disappeared from the company account on the same day he had access to the accounting books." The words hit Victor like a bullet. She had never known those details. She only knew that her father had been fired and had died of a heart attack 2 years later. Heartbroken, Carmen looked at her mother in horror. You had Victor's father falsely accused. I protected my company from a dishonest employee." "You're lying," Victor shouted, his eyes burning with pain and rage. "My father was the most honest man I ever knew." "Then prove it," Christina said with a cruel smile. "Prove that your father was not a thief, and I will give you my blessing to marry Carmen." "Mom, no," whispered Carmen. "But if you can't prove it," Christina continued, "you will disappear from our lives forever." Victor felt as if he were standing on the edge of a precipice. The truth about his father, Carmen's love, his own dignity, everything was at stake. "I accept," Victor finally said. "No," Carmen cried out, but he had already made his decision because there was something Christina Gonzalez didn't know, something that would change everything and that he was about to discover. That night in his small apartment, Victor couldn't sleep. Christina Gonzalez's words echoed in his mind like a torturous echo. $50,000 had disappeared. The same day he had access to the accounting books, he got up and went to the old closet where he kept his father's belongings. His hands trembled as he opened the cardboard box that had remained closed for years. Family photographs, work medals, letters of recognition from the Gonzalez Motors Company, and at the bottom, a yellowed envelope he had never opened. With his heart pounding violently, he tore open the envelope. Inside was a letter written in his father's shaky handwriting. "My dear Victor, if you are reading this, it means that I am no longer with you. There is something you need to know about the day I was fired, something I swore I would take to my grave, but that you may one day need to clear my name. I did not steal that money, but I know who did." Victor's hands shook so much that he almost dropped the letter. It was one of Christina Gonzalez's main partners, a man named Alejandro Ruiz. "I saw him tamper with the accounting books. I saw him transfer the money to a personal account. When I confronted him, he threatened me. He said that if I spoke up, not only would they fire me, but they would make sure I could never work anywhere again. I have proof, son. I hid it in a safe place if you ever need it. It's at the San Miguel Deposit Bank, safe deposit box number 342. The key is taped under the bottom drawer of my desk. I never spoke up because I was afraid of what they might do to us. But maybe you're braver than your old father. I love you, son. Take care of your sister, my dad." Victor dropped the letter and ran to his father's old desk. His fingers frantically searched under the bottom drawer until he felt the cold metal of a small key taped down. He had it. He had the key to the truth. But when he looked up, his sister Maria was standing in the doorway, her eyes filled with tears. "Victor, what's going on? I heard you shouting." Maria was only 17, but she had matured too quickly after their parents' death. Victor had protected her from the truth for years, telling her only that Dad had had problems at work. "Maria, sit down. There's something you need to know." He told her everything. The Carmen bet, the accusation against his father, and now the evidence that could change everything. When he finished, Maria's fists were clenched and tears of rage ran down her cheeks. "All these years we've lived with the shame of something Dad didn't do." "Yes," Victor whispered, "and tomorrow I'm going to prove it." But Maria grabbed his arm. "What if it's a trap? What if this Gonzalez family is more dangerous than we think?" Victor looked at his sister. She was all he had left in the world. If anything happened to him. "I have to do this, Maria. For Dad. For us." He paused. "And for Carmen." "Do you love her?" his sister asked softly. Victor closed his eyes, the image of Carmen looking at him with admiration after he fixed the Ferrari, her voice defending him in front of their mother, the way she had said his name. "Yes," he finally admitted. "I love her." Maria nodded. "Then go, but promise me you will be careful." The next day, Victor headed to Banco San Miguel with his heart pounding like a war drum. The safe deposit box contained documents, photographs, and recordings that his father had made in secret. Everything was there: illegal transfers, forged documents, and even recordings of conversations between Alejandro Ruiz and other executives planning how to frame Eduardo Serrano. Victor felt rage and vindication mingle in his chest. His father had been innocent, completely innocent. But when he left the bank, he was not alone. Cristina Gonzalez was waiting for him, leaning against a black Mercedes with a smile that made his blood run cold. "I see you found something interesting," she said, looking at the folder he was carrying under his arm. "How did I know I have contacts in all the banks in Madrid, dear?" "When Eduardo Serrano's son accesses a safe deposit box that has been closed for years, I find out." Victor instinctively backed away. "Don't come any closer. I have everything I need to prove my father was innocent." "Cristina Rio." "Oh, yes. And what do you plan to do with that? Go to the police? Call the newspapers?" "If necessary, let me explain something to you, naive boy," Cristina said, moving dangerously closer. "Alejandro Ruiz died 5 years ago. The bank accounts from that time have been closed, and all the executives who could corroborate your story, well, let's just say they're no longer available for comment." Victor felt the world collapse at his feet. "Besides," Cristina continued, "if you make that information public, you won't just be accusing a dead man, you'll be accusing my company of a cover-up. Do you know what that would mean?" "The truth always comes out," Victor said weakly. "The truth." Cristina moved so close that he could smell her expensive perfume. "The truth is, I can destroy your little workshop with a single phone call. I can make sure you never get a job again. I can." She paused when a familiar voice interrupted her. "You can what, Mom?" Carmen appeared behind the Mercedes, her eyes burning with anger and determination. "Carmen, what are you doing here?" "Following you because I knew you would do something terrible." Carmen stood next to Victor, taking his hand. The contact sent an electric shock through her body. "Victor told me everything last night," Carmen said, staring at her mother, "about her father, about the accusations. And now I see he was right about you." Cristina turned pale. "Carmen, you don't know what you're talking about." "I know exactly what I'm talking about," Carmen shouted. "You destroyed an innocent family to protect your company. It was necessary. I had to protect what I had built." "Necessary." Carmen began to cry. "It was necessary for a man to die of a heart attack with a broken heart. It was necessary for 2 children to grow up thinking their father was a thief." The silence that followed was deafening. Victor squeezed Carmen's hand, feeling a mixture of love, pain, and hope that he didn't know how to process. Carmen said softly, "Your mother is right about one thing. I can't prove anything. The witnesses are dead. The accounts are closed. This doesn't change anything." Carmen looked at him with an intensity that completely disarmed him. "It doesn't change the legal facts, Victor, but it changes everything that matters." She turned to her mother. "You have a decision to make, Mom. You can continue this war. You can destroy Victor's workshop. You can threaten and blackmail us." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was steely. "But if you do, you'll lose me forever. And I don't just mean walking away. I mean I'll never speak to you again. You'll never be part of my life again. And when you die, You'll be completely alone. Christina recoiled as if she had been struck. Carmen, you can't. I'm your mother. Yes, you're my mother, and that's why I'm giving you a chance to do the right thing. The air between the three figures was so tense that it seemed it could break. Cristina Gonzalez, one of the most powerful women in Spain, was facing the most important decision of her life. She would choose power or her daughter's love, and the answer would change everything. She was about to give it. Cristina Gonzalez looked at her daughter as if she were seeing her for the first time. Carmen was no longer the obedient young woman she had molded for years. Her eyes shone with an iron determination, a strength that Cristina recognized because it was the same strength she had had when she was young. Carmen whispered, and for the first time in years, her voice trembled. You can't ask me to destroy everything I've worked for. I'm not asking you to destroy anything, Mom. I'm asking you to do the right thing. Victor watched the exchange in silence, feeling his heart break for Carmen. He could see the pain in her eyes, the war between her love for her mother and her need for justice. The right thing. Christina let out a bitter laugh. Do you know what's right in the business world? Surviving, protecting what you've built. I was a woman alone in a man's world, Carmen. I had to make tough decisions. Ruining innocent families isn't a tough decision, Mom. It's a cowardly decision. The words hit Christina like slaps. She turned to Victor, her eyes burning with anger and pain. And you, she snapped, do you really think you can make her happy? A mechanic who lives on the outskirts of Madrid. What future can you offer her? Victor felt all his insecurities rise to the surface. It was true. What could he offer a woman like Carmen? A life of financial hardship, a small apartment, constant uncertainty. But before he could answer, Carmen did it for him. He can offer me something that all your money can't buy, Mom. He can offer me respect, honesty, a love that isn't conditional on what I can give him in return. Her words rang out like bells. And you think love is enough? Christina asked dismissively. Do you think love pays the bills? That love protects you when the world turns cruel? Carmen squeezed Victor's hand tighter. I believe that real love gives you the strength to face anything, something you never understood. Christina was silent for a long time. Her eyes moved between her daughter and Victor, as if she were making complex calculations in her mind. Finally, she spoke. Very well, you want me to do the right thing? This is what I'm going to do. She took out her cell phone. I'm going to call my lawyer. We're going to make a public statement admitting that Eduardo Serrano was unfairly dismissed. His name will be cleared. Victor felt his knees weaken. After all these years, Christina continued, I'm going to set up a compensation fund for you and your sister. It won't bring your father back, but it's the least I can do. Victor couldn't speak. Tears ran down his cheeks uncontrollably. But Christina raised a finger. That's all I'll do. I won't give you my blessing. I won't approve of this relationship. And Carmen, if you choose to be with him, it will be without my support, without my money, without my name. Carmen turned pale, but she didn't let go of Victor's hand. You're disinheriting me. I'm giving you a choice. The Gonzalez Empire or him. You can't have both. The ultimatum hung in the air like a guillotine waiting to fall. Victor looked at Carmen with a broken heart. Carmen, you can't. You can't give up everything for me. Your future, your security, everything you've ever known. Carmen looked at him with a smile that broke his heart. My future, Victor. You are my future. Without letting go of his hand, she turned to her mother. I accept your offer, Mom. You will clear Victor's father's name, but I also accept the consequences. She took off the expensive pearl necklace she was wearing around her neck and handed it to Christina. I never needed your money to be happy. I just needed your love. And if you can't give it to me unconditionally, then I'd rather live without it. Christina took the necklace with trembling hands, as if it were the most fragile thing in the world. Carmen, you are my only daughter, and you are my only mother. The decision is yours. Christina closed her eyes, pressing the necklace against her chest. When she opened them again, tears were running down her cheeks. For the first time in decades, Christina Gonzalez was crying. 2 weeks had passed since the confrontation at the bank. Victor had not seen Carmen again. Christina had kept her word. The public statement had been made. The newspapers had covered the story. Businesswoman acknowledges historic mistake. Eduardo Serrano was innocent. The compensation fund had been established, but the price had been brutal. Victor worked in his workshop, trying to keep his hands busy so he wouldn't think. Every noise in the street made him look up, hoping to see Carmen's silhouette, but she never came. His sister Maria watched him with concern. "Victor, you have to eat something. You can't go on like this." "I'm fine," he lied, even though he had lost several pounds and had deep circles under his eyes. "You're not fine, and neither is she." Victor dropped the wrench he was holding. Maria, she made her choice. She chose her family, her future. Was it the right thing to do? Was it the right thing to do, or was it what you told her to do? Victor looked at her in surprise. "What do you mean?" Maria approached him and put her hands on his shoulders. "Brother, did you tell her not to give up her inheritance?" Victor's silence was answer enough. "Victor," Maria exclaimed, "how could you? She was willing to give up everything for you." "Exactly," he exploded. "She was going to give up everything. How could I let her ruin her life for me? And who are you to decide what's best for her?" His sister's words hit him like a hammer. "I just wanted to protect her." "No, Victor, you wanted to protect yourself. You were afraid that one day she would regret it. You were afraid you wouldn't be good enough for her." Victor slumped into a chair, covering his face with his hands. "Maria, I'm a mechanic. She was an heiress. How was that going to work?" "You know what?" Maria said softly. "Dad was afraid too. Afraid to fight for the truth, afraid of the consequences, and that fear killed him." Victor looked up, his eyes filled with tears. "You didn't learn anything from his story. Sometimes you have to be brave, even if you're afraid. Sometimes you have to fight for what you love, even if the odds are against you." At that moment, the phone rang in the workshop. Maria answered it. "Yes." Her expression changed radically. "Who?" "Yes, yes, just a moment." She handed the phone to Victor with wide eyes. "It's Carmen." Victor's heart stopped and his hands trembled. He took the phone. "Carmen, hi, Victor." Her voice sounded different, more mature, more determined. "I need to see you, Carmen. We talked about this. We decided that you decided. I never agreed." Victor closed his eyes. "Where are you?" "In the park where we used to go when we were kids. The one near your neighborhood." "Can you come, Carmen, please, Victor? Give me a chance to fight for us." The line went dead. Victor stared at the phone as if it were a poisonous snake. Maria pushed him toward the door. "Go now, Maria. I don't know if Victor will. If you don't go, I swear I'll drag you there myself." 15 minutes later, Victor arrived at the small park. Carmen was sitting on a swing, rocking gently. She was wearing jeans and a simple t-shirt. He had never seen her so beautiful. He approached slowly, as if she might disappear at any moment. "Tolosans," he said softly. "Hello," she replied without stopping her swinging. He sat on the swing next to her for several minutes. Neither of them spoke. "How have you been?" Victor finally asked. Carmen laughed humorlessly. "Terrible. And you?" They looked at each other and smiled despite everything. "Victor, I have something to tell you." "Carmen, no, let me speak first." She paused and looked directly at him. "For the past 2 weeks, I've been living in a friend's apartment without my mother's money, without her contacts, without anything." Victor felt a pang of guilt. "Carmen, didn't you have to—" "You know what I discovered?" She interrupted him. "That I'm stronger than I thought. I got a job at a small art gallery. It doesn't pay much, but I love it. For the first time in my life, I'm doing something I really want to do." Victor looked at her with a mixture of admiration and pain. "I'm happy for you. You deserve to be happy. Really." Carmen got off the swing and stood in front of him. "Because I have the impression that you decided I couldn't be happy with you. Carmen, do you know what hurts me the most? It's not losing the money. It's not the fight with my mother. It's that the man I love decided I wasn't strong enough to make my own decisions." The words hit Victor like punches. "That's not it." "No," Carmen moved closer. "Then tell me, Victor, why did you push me away?" Victor stood up and paced nervously. "Wabahong, because I don't want you to look at me in 10 years and regret it. I don't want you to wake up one day in a small apartment worrying about bills and wondering what would have happened if you had made a different choice." Carmen looked at him with a mixture of anger and tenderness. "And it didn't occur to you to ask me what I wanted." Carmen, I'm a realist. We come from different worlds. Yes, that's true. I come from a world of love, manipulation, and loneliness. You come from a world of honesty, hard work, and true love. She moved closer until she was inches away from him. Do you know which one I prefer, Victor? She felt his breath catch in his throat. Carmen, I love you, Victor Serrano. I love you with all my heart. And if you give me a chance, I'll spend the rest of my life proving to you that I made the right choice. She moved closer until she could feel his breath. The question is, do you love me enough to be brave? Victor looked into her eyes. He saw pain there, hope, fear, but above all, he saw love. Real, deep, unconditional love. And for the first time in 2 weeks, he decided to be brave. He took her in his arms and kissed her as if it were the last thing he would ever do in his life when they parted. They both had tears in their eyes. I love you, he whispered. I love you so much it scares me. It scares me too, she admitted, but I'm willing to be scared with you. They embraced under the stars, feeling as if the whole world had made sense again. But neither of them knew that Cristina Gonzalez was watching them from afar, her heart broken and a terrible decision taking shape in her mind. Cristina Gonzalez couldn't sleep. For 3 nights she had been pacing around her empty mansion, feeling as if the silence was devouring her alive. Carmen was gone. Her only daughter, the reason she had built an empire, was no longer part of her life. She went to the study and opened a photo album she hadn't touched in years. Carmen as a baby, Carmen taking her first steps, Carmen graduating from college. When had everything become so complicated? The phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. Mrs. Gonzalez, it was her personal secretary. Sorry to bother you so late, but you have a visitor. Who? A young woman who says her name is Maria Serrano. Christina frowned. The mechanic's sister. Send her into the study. 5 minutes later, Maria entered the room. She was young, perhaps 17 years old, but there was something in her eyes that spoke of premature maturity. Christina recognized that look. It was the same one she had had at that age. Mrs. Gonzalez, Maria said respectfully, but without submission. Thank you for seeing me. What do you want? Christina asked directly. Maria sat down without being invited, a gesture that surprised Christina. I want to talk to you about your daughter. Carmen is no longer my business. Seriously. Maria bowed her head, because a mother who spies on her daughter in the park doesn't seem like someone who has given up on her. Christina froze. What? I saw you. You were there watching while Carmen and my brother reconciled. Christina turned her back on the young woman. I don't know what you're talking about, Mrs. Gonzalez. My brother and I lost our parents. I know what someone who is suffering for love looks like. And you are suffering. Why are you here? Christina asked hoarsely. Maria stood up and approached her. I've come to offer you something I think you need. What? A chance to get your daughter back. Without losing her dignity, Christina turned slowly. Explain yourself. Maria took a deep breath. My brother is proud, too proud. He would never accept charity from you. But what if it wasn't charity? Speak clearly. Victor is the best mechanic I've ever known. He has a special gift for understanding machines. With the compensation you gave us, we're thinking of opening a bigger workshop. But we would need a partner, someone with business experience. Christina narrowed her eyes. Are you proposing that I invest in your brother's business? No, I'm proposing that you form a partnership with Carmen. The air thickened. Christina remained motionless. Carmen knows nothing about mechanics. No, but she knows about art, design, and dealing with high-class clients. Maria smiled. Imagine a luxury car workshop, not just repairs, but classic car restorations, customization of exclusive vehicles. Carmen would be perfect for the commercial and design side. Christina sat down slowly. And how would that benefit Carmen? She would have her own business, her financial independence, but she would also have a reason to reconnect with her family, especially if her mother were a silent consultant on the project. A silent consultant. You have contacts, you know the luxury market, you could help without Victor feeling threatened. And Carmen would see that you are trying to support her new life, not control it. Christina looked at the young woman with a mixture of admiration and surprise. You are very smart for your age. I had to be, just like you, I imagine. They looked at each other with mutual respect. Why are you doing this? Christina asked. Your brother might be upset with you for talking to me. Maria smiled sadly. Because I've seen how my brother has been these past few weeks without Carmen, and because I know what it's like to lose a mother, I wouldn't wish it on anyone. Christina felt her eyes fill with tears. Carmen Mo talks about me. She's hurt all the time. Yes, but she loves you. Mrs. Gonzalez, she just wants you to love her unconditionally. Christina stood up and walked to the window. If I do this, if I accept this proposal, there's no guarantee that Carmen will forgive me. No, but there is a guarantee that if you don't, you'll lose her forever. The silence stretched on for several long minutes. Finally, Christina spoke. What would you need to get started? Maria smiled. Let me talk to Victor. Give him a few days, and then maybe you could visit us as a potential customer who heard about the new classic car restoration workshop. And if Victor gets suspicious, my brother is brilliant with machines, but he's pretty naive when it comes to family maneuvers. Christina let out a small laugh, her first in weeks. All right, but I have one condition. What is it? If this works, if Carmen agrees to see me again, you let me help you with your education. A young woman as smart as you should go to college. Maria smiled brightly. It's a deal, Mrs. Gonzalez. When Maria left, Christina stood in her study, feeling something she hadn't experienced in a long time. Hope. For the first time since the confrontation at the bank, Christina Gonzalez allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she hadn't lost her daughter forever. 3 weeks later, the new Serrano workshop at Asociados was taking shape. Victor worked day and night with a renewed energy that surprised everyone who knew him. Carmen had turned out to be a sociap. Her eye for design had transformed what was once a simple mechanics workshop into something more like an automotive art studio. Are you sure about this? Victor asked, looking at the plans Carmen had designed. It's very elegant for a workshop. Carmen came over and kissed him on the cheek. Trust me, if we're going to work with classic and luxury cars, we need customers to feel comfortable leaving their treasures here. Maria watched from the back, smiling secretly. Her plan was working perfectly. By the way, she said casually, a lady came in yesterday asking about our services. She has a classic Mercedes that needs a complete restoration. Victor looked up, interested. What model? A 1954 SL. She says it's a family heirloom. Carmen froze. She knew that car. It was the first Mercedes her grandfather had bought when he arrived in Spain from Germany. What? What was the lady's name? She asked, her voice trembling. Maria shrugged, trying to look innocent. Gonzalez, I think. Christina Gonzalez. The silence that followed was deafening. Victor immediately tensed up. Maria, tell her we're not interested. Victor, Carmen exclaimed. She's my mother. Exactly. She's your mother who made our lives miserable and who is now trying to make amends. Carmen interrupted. How can you be sure? Carmen looked at Maria, who seemed very focused on organizing some papers. Maria said slowly, what else did my mother tell you? Maria looked up with an expression of total innocence, saying only that she had heard we were the best at restoring classics and that, well, she wanted to surprise someone special with her father's car. Carmen felt her eyes fill with tears. The Mercedes had belonged to her grandfather, the man she had loved most in her childhood after his death. Her mother had kept it in the garage, always telling her that one day they would restore it together. Victor said softly, that car is very special to me. Victor saw the pain in Carmen's eyes and felt his heart soften. Carmen, I'm not asking you to forgive her. I'm asking you to let me try to fix things with my mother. Victor looked at Maria, who gave him a small nod of affirmation. He sighed deeply. Okay, but I'm not going to talk to her. You handle all the communication. Carmen threw herself into his arms. Thank you. I love you so much. The next day, Christina arrived at the workshop driving the classic Mercedes herself. Carmen went out to greet her, her heart pounding. Mother and daughter looked at each other for the first time in weeks. Hello, Mom. Hello, Carmen. Christina got out of the car slowly. She was wearing simple clothes, very different from her usual designer outfits. The workshop is beautiful, she said, looking around. Thank you. We've worked hard. They stood there awkwardly, not knowing what to say. The Mercedes, Carmen began. Your grandfather always wanted us to restore it together, Christina finished. I thought maybe it was time to fulfill that promise. Carmen felt tears begin to well up. Mom, I don't expect you to forgive me right away, Christina said quickly. I know I've made terrible mistakes, but I want to try to be the mother you deserve. Carmen slowly approached her. Really, really, they hugged for the first time in months, both crying. Victor watched from the workshop window, feeling a mixture of emotions. Maria approached him. Are you okay? Yes, he said quietly. I hope she's really changed. People can change, Victor, especially when they realize what really matters. Over the next few weeks, Christina visited the workshop regularly to supervise the restoration of the Mercedes. At first, her conversations with Victor were tense and formal, but gradually she began to see what Carmen saw in him. He was hardworking, honest, brilliant, and above all, he made her daughter happy in a way Christina had never seen before. One afternoon, while Victor was working on the Mercedes' engine, Christina approached him. Can I ask you something? Victor looked up in surprise. It was the first time she had ever initiated a conversation. Sure. Do you really love my daughter? The question was direct, unadorned, typical of Christina Gonzalez. Victor put down his tools and looked at her directly. I love her more than my own life and would do anything to make her happy, even take her away from her family, especially to protect her from people who could hurt her, including myself if necessary. Christina nodded slowly. My daughter is very lucky. No, Mrs. Gonzalez, I'm the lucky one. For the first time since she had known him, Christina smiled at Victor Serrano. Maybe we are both lucky to have her in our lives. It was a small step, but it was a start, and sometimes beginnings are all we need to change the world. 6 months had passed since Carmen and her mother had reconciled. The Serrano in Asociados workshop had become the most exclusive place in Madrid for classic car restoration. Victor was working on a 1961 Jaguar when Carmen walked into the workshop with a mysterious smile. What's got you so happy? He asked, wiping his hands. My mother wants to invite us to dinner at her house tonight. Victor frowned. Although his relationship with Christina had improved considerably, family dinners were still tense. Is there a special occasion? Carmen shrugged, but her smile grew wider. She says she wants to celebrate the success of the workshop. That night, Victor put on his best shirt and went with Carmen to the Gonzalez mansion. He had been there several times in recent months, but the place still intimidated him. Christina greeted them at the door wearing an elegant but not ostentatious dress. Carmen, Victor, I'm glad you came. Dinner went surprisingly well. Christina had prepared paella, remembering that it was Carmen's favorite dish. They talked about the workshop, about new projects, about everything except what everyone was thinking. After dessert, Christina stood up. I have something to give you. She disappeared for a few minutes and returned with a small velvet box. Carmen and Victor exchanged nervous glances. This, Christina began with a trembling voice, belonged to my mother and her mother before her. She opened the box, revealing a vintage engagement ring with a diamond that sparkled like a star. Carmen turned pale. Mom, for generations, the women in our family have worn this ring when they found the man they wanted to spend the rest of their lives with. Christina looked directly at Victor. Victor Serrano, over these past months, I have seen how you care for my daughter. I have seen how you love her, respect her, support her, and I have seen how she blossoms by your side in a way I never thought possible. She held out the box to him. If you are willing, I would like you to be part of our family. Officially, Victor stood completely still. Christina Gonzalez was giving him her blessing. She was giving him the family ring. Mrs. Gonzalez, I don't know what to say. Say yes, whispered Carmen with tears in her eyes. Victor looked at the ring, then at Carmen, then at Christina. 3 months ago, this woman had tried to destroy his life. Now she was giving him the most precious family heirloom. Why for ye? He asked. Why now? Christina sat down, her eyes shining with unshed tears. Because I realized something, Victor. For years, I thought that protecting Carmen meant keeping her away from anything that could hurt her. But I was wrong. She paused, struggling with her emotions. Protecting someone you love means helping them find their own happiness, even if that happiness is not what you had planned. She moved closer to Victor. You're not what I had planned for Carmen, but you're exactly what she needs. And that makes me the luckiest woman in the world, because it means my daughter has found true love. Victor took the box with trembling hands. Christina, I don't deserve this. You deserve this and more. But above all, Carmen deserves it. Victor turned to Carmen, who looked at him with so much love that his chest ached. He knelt right there in the elegant dining room of the Gonzalez mansion. Carmen Gonzalez, he said in a trembling but firm voice. From the first day I saw you, I knew my life had changed forever. You made me believe I could be more than I thought I was. You taught me that true love knows no boundaries or social classes. Carmen began to cry openly. Will you marry me? Will you be my wife, my partner, my best friend for the rest of our lives? Yes, Carmen shouted, throwing herself into his arms. Yes, yes, 1,000 times, yes. Victor slipped the ring onto her finger with trembling hands. It fit perfectly. Christina watched the scene with tears running freely down her cheeks. For the first time in years, she felt completely at peace. Her daughter had found love, and she had found a new family. When Carmen and Victor embraced, Christina approached and wrapped them in a group hug. Welcome to the family, son, she whispered. And for the first time in his life, Victor Serrano felt like he truly had a home. Wedding preparations had begun immediately after the engagement. Carmen had insisted on a small, intimate ceremony. But Christina had other ideas. Carmen, dear, she said as she reviewed a never-ending list, it will only be the creme de la creme of Madrid, 300 people maximum. Carmen and Victor exchanged amused glances. They had learned that it was best to let Christina channel her excitement through the planning. Mom, we agreed it would be small. This is small, Christina protested. I could invite 1,000 people if I wanted to. Maria, who had been officially appointed family peace coordinator, interjected diplomatically. How about we have an intimate ceremony for close family and then a larger reception? Christina looked at her admiringly. You're brilliant, Maria, perfect. The ceremony in the little church of San Miguel, where my parents were married, and the reception in the gardens of the house. Victor still couldn't believe how his life had changed. Just a year ago, he was a mechanic struggling to make ends meet, and now he was planning his wedding to the woman of his dreams, with the support of his future mother-in-law. But not everything was perfect. Victor had noticed that Carmen seemed worried about something. What's wrong? He asked her one afternoon while they were working together in the workshop. Carmen sighed. It's just that there's something I never told you about my father. Victor stopped working immediately. Your father, I thought he died when you were little. That's the problem. Carmen avoided his gaze. He didn't die. He left. The air thickened between them. He left. Carmen sat down on a workbench, nervously playing with her hands. When I was 8, my parents had a terrible fight. It was about business, about the way my mother ran the company. My father said she was becoming too ruthless, that she was losing her humanity. Victor approached and sat down beside her. And what happened? One night he just left. He left a letter saying he couldn't continue to be part of something that was turning him into someone he didn't recognize. We never heard from him again. Carmen began to cry. My mother told me he had died to protect me from abandonment, but I always knew the truth. Victor hugged her. Carmen, I'm so sorry. The worst part is that I'm afraid that when my mother realizes what it's really like to live without all her money and power, when she sees the real difficulties, she'll regret taking us in. Victor lifted her chin so she would look at him. Your mother has changed, Carmen. I've seen it. And if that's not enough, and if things get tough for her, then we'll face it together like we've faced everything else. Carmen nodded, but Victor could see that her fears hadn't completely disappeared. What neither of them knew was that Christina had been listening to them from the workshop door. That night, Christina sat in her study looking at a photograph of her ex-husband. For years, she had buried her memories of him, convincing herself that he had been a coward for leaving. But now, seeing how Victor loved Carmen, she realized something terrible. Her husband hadn't left because he was a coward. He had left because he could no longer recognize the woman he loved beneath all the ambition and cruelty. And worst of all, he had been right. Christina made a decision that would change everything. 2 weeks before the wedding, Christina disappeared without saying a word. Carmen was frantic. She hasn't answered her phone in 3 days, she yelled at Victor. What if something happened to her? What if she changed her mind about us? Victor tried to stay calm, but he was also worried. Maybe Carmen needed time to think. The wedding preparations had been intense. No, Carmen began to pace back and forth. This was exactly what she feared. She realized she had made a mistake, and the sound of a car pulling up interrupted them. Carmen ran to the window and froze. Her mother was getting out of a taxi, but she wasn't alone. A man in his 50s with gray hair and kind eyes was helping her with her bags. "Carmen," Victor asked, noticing her pallor. "What's wrong?" Carmen couldn't speak, couldn't move, because after 15 years her father was standing in front of her house. Christina and the man approached the door. When Christina saw Carmen's expression, she slowly approached. "Carmen, dear, is there someone you want to meet the man who is going to marry your daughter?" "Hello, my girl," the man said in a trembling voice. "You've grown so much." Carmen began to shake. Tears of shock, anger, and confusion ran down her cheeks. "Dad," she whispered. "Yes, it's me." Carmen stared at him for several long seconds. Then she turned to her mother. "How could you?" she roared. "How could you, Carmen?" "Please, let me explain." "No," Carmen was hysterical. "You lied to me for 15 years. You told me he was dead. I had to protect you." "Protect me?" Carmen laughed bitterly. "Protect me from what? From the truth?" Victor watched the scene, not knowing how to intervene. The pain in Carmen's eyes broke his heart. Carmen's father took a step forward. "Carmen, your mother did what she thought was best. You have no right to defend her," Carmen shouted at him. "You abandoned us. I was lost, confused. I had done things in business that I was ashamed of. I thought you would be better off without me. Better off without you." Carmen approached him with eyes burning with pain. "Do you know how many nights I cried, wondering why my dad didn't love me enough to stay?" The words hit the man like punches. He began to cry. "I loved you. I love you. I never stopped loving you." "Then why?" Carmen collapsed into a chair. "Why did you leave us?" Her father looked at Christina, then at Victor, then back at Carmen. "Because I was turning into a monster. The business, the decisions I had to make. I was losing my soul, and I was afraid that if I stayed, you would lose yours too." Christina intervened, her voice breaking. "Carmen, I looked for him. For the last 2 weeks, I hired private investigators. When I saw how your fears of abandonment affected you, I knew I had to try to repair the damage I had caused." Carmen looked at her parents, then at Victor. I need to be alone, all of you. Just go. Go." "Carmen, I said go." Victor approached her. "Carmen, I'm not going to leave you alone. On with this." She looked at him with eyes filled with a mixture of love and despair. "Victor, please, I love you, but I need to process this. Just give me an hour to understand what's going on." Victor hesitated, but finally nodded. "Okay, but I'll be in the workshop if you need me. I know." The three men left, leaving Carmen alone with her shattered thoughts. An hour later, Carmen arrived at the workshop. Victor was working on an engine, but it was obvious he couldn't concentrate. "Better?" he asked softly. Carmen sat down next to him. "No, but clearer. What are you going to do?" Carmen sighed deeply. "I'm going to forgive them. Both of them." Victor looked at her in surprise. "Are you sure?" "No," but Carmen took his hands. "These months with you have taught me something important. Life is too short to waste on resentment. My father made terrible mistakes, but he's here. He's trying to make amends. And my mother moved heaven and earth to bring him back. And how do you feel about the wedding? Do you still want it?" Carmen kissed him, interrupting him. "Victor Serrano, I'm going to marry you, even if I have to drag you to the altar." Victor smiled for the first time in hours. "Well, if you insist, I insist. But there's something I need to do first." "What?" Carmen stood up with steely determination in her eyes. "I need to talk to my parents. The three of us together, and we're going to resolve this once and for all." Victor stood up too. "Do you want me to go with you?" Carmen looked at him with so much love that he felt he could conquer the world forever. For everything. Forever. And as they walked hand in hand toward the house where a broken family waited to be mended, Victor knew that no matter what happened, they would face everything together. Because that was what people who truly loved each other did. They stayed, they fought, and they never ever gave up on each other. The family conversation lasted until the wee hours of the morning. There were tears, screams, reproaches, and finally a brutal honesty that none of the three had experienced in decades. Carmen's father, whose name was Roberto, had spent the last 15 years working as a carpenter in a small town in Asturias. He had built a simple, honest life, but he had never stopped thinking about his family. "Why didn't you ever contact us?" Carmen asked in a calmer voice after hours of tears. "Because I thought it was better that way," Roberto replied with trembling hands. "I thought that if I showed up again, I would only cause you more pain. You had moved on." "We never moved on," Christina exclaimed. "I built a wall around my heart and turned our daughter into a prisoner of my fears." Carmen looked at her parents, seeing for the first time two broken people who had made terrible mistakes out of misguided love. "Dad," she finally said, "what you did was wrong. Abandoning your family is never the answer." Roberto nodded, tears running down his cheeks. I know. And I'm sorry more than I can express." Carmen turned to her mother. "And you, Mom, lying to me for 15 years, making me believe he was dead, that was wrong too." Christina lowered her head. "I know, sweetheart, but I was so afraid of losing you." "I lost you both anyway," Carmen said softly. "I lost you both the day Dad left and you decided to lie to me about it." Silence stretched on for several minutes. Finally, Carmen spoke again. "But here we are, the three of us, broken, wounded, but together. And I believe we can try to be a family again." Roberto and Christina looked at her hopefully. "Really, Christina whispered, "really, but with conditions, no more lies, ever. And Dad, if you're going to be part of our lives, you have to be really present. No disappearing when things get tough." "I promise I'll never leave again," Roberto said solemnly. Carmen nodded. Then she looked at Victor, who had remained silent throughout the conversation. "What do you think?" she asked him. Victor had been watching the Gonzalez family with fascination and sadness. Seeing Carmen struggle with abandonment and lies reminded him of his own family demons. "I believe," he said slowly, "that families are complicated and that they all have secrets and wounds. But I also believe that true love means being willing to forgive and start over." He looked directly at Roberto. "Sir, I'm not going to pretend to understand why you left, but I see how much you regret it, and I see how much you love Carmen. And that's what matters now." Roberto extended his trembling hand. "Thank you, Victor, and I promise that I will be the father Carmen deserves from now on." Victor shook his hand, "And I promise that I will be the husband she deserves." Carmen looked at them both, feeling her heart fill with a peace she hadn't experienced in years. Then she said, wiping away the last of her tears, "We're getting married in a week. And this time I'm going to have my mother and father walking me down the aisle." Christina and Roberto exchanged nervous glances. Carmen said, "Christina, I don't know if your father and I can do that. I mean, together. I'm not asking you to be husband and wife again," Carmen said firmly. "I'm asking you to be my parents, both of you together for me." Roberto nodded. "We would do anything for you." Christina took her daughter's hand. Anything. And for the first time in 15 years, the Gonzalez family was complete. Broken, imperfect, scarred, but complete. The wedding day dawned with a perfect blue sky and a gentle breeze that made the flowers dance in the gardens of the Gonzalez mansion. Victor woke up in his apartment, where he had spent his last night as a bachelor, with a mixture of nerves and excitement that had kept him awake since 4 a.m. Maria had made him breakfast, but he could hardly eat. "Brother, you have to eat something," she insisted. "We don't want you to faint at the altar." "I'm not going to faint," Victor protested, although his pallor said otherwise. "Are you nervous about the ceremony? Or because Carmen's parents will be there together?" Victor sighed. The situation with Roberto had been tense. Although he had forgiven his father-in-law for Carmen's sake, the relationship between them remained fragile, a little on both sides, I suppose, at the Gonzalez mansion. Carmen was surrounded by women helping her get ready. Her mother had hired the best stylist in Madrid, but Carmen had insisted on something simple and elegant. The dress was a work of art, pure white silk with delicate lace that had belonged to her great-grandmother. Simple, but absolutely beautiful. "You look gorgeous, sweetheart," Christina said with tears in her eyes. "Thank you, Mom, for everything, for bringing Dad back, for accepting Victor, for being the mother I always knew you could be." Christina hugged her daughter carefully so as not to ruin her hairstyle. "You taught me how to be a better person, Carmen. You and Victor." Roberto appeared at the door wearing an elegant suit that Christina had insisted on buying for him, and he looked nervous but determined. "You're ready, my princess." Carmen turned and smiled brightly. Ready, Dad? The small church of San Miguel was decorated with white roses and lilies. The guests were exactly what Carmen had wanted. Close family, true friends, and some of the workshop's customers who had become friends. Victor waited at the altar wearing a suit that Maria had insisted on buying for him. He had never felt so nervous and so happy. At the same time, the music began to play. First, the bridesmaids entered. Maria, who was wearing a sky blue dress that made her look like a princess, and two of Carmen's friends from college. Then the doors opened completely, and there was Carmen. Victor felt as if time had stopped. She walked slowly down the aisle with Roberto on one side and Cristina on the other, her parents together, leading her toward her future. Carmen had tears in her eyes, but she smiled with a happiness that radiated throughout the church. When they reached the altar, Roberto and Cristina kissed their daughter on the cheeks and officially gave her away to Victor. "Take care of her," Roberto whispered. "With my life," Victor replied. The ceremony was simple but emotional. When it came time for the vows, Victor had prepared something special. Carmen began with a trembling but steady voice. "When I met you, I was just a mechanic with dirty hands and small dreams. You taught me that I could be more. You taught me that true love sees no social class or economic differences, only hearts that beat in unison." Her voice broke slightly. "I promise to love you in wealth and in poverty, in health and in sickness, on good days and on difficult days. I promise to be your partner, your support, your best friend, and I promise that I will never, ever let you forget how extraordinary you are." Carmen couldn't stop crying. "Victor," she said in a trembling voice, "you saved me not from an ivory tower, but from an empty life. You taught me that true wealth is not measured in money, but in love, in honesty, in the ability to forgive and start over." She looked at her parents, then back at Victor. "I promise to love you with all that I am. I promise to be by your side in all our adventures. I promise to be your equal, your partner, your accomplice in all our dreams. And I promise I will never let you forget how extraordinary you are." When the priest said, "You may kiss," Victor and Carmen embraced as if it were the first and last time they would ever see each other. The kiss was soft, tender, full of promise and hope. The church exploded in applause and tears of joy. At the reception, the gardens of the Gonzalez mansion had been transformed into a paradise of lights and flowers. The celebration was exactly as Carmen had dreamed. Elegant but warm, formal but full of genuine love. During the first dance, Victor and Carmen moved as if they were the only two people in the world. "Are you happy?" he asked softly. "Happier than I ever thought possible," she replied. With no regrets, Carmen looked around. Her mother was dancing with some guests, smiling genuinely. For the first time in years, her father was talking to Maria, clearly making an effort to get to know his new family. The friends from the workshop were laughing and celebrating as if they were royalty. "No regrets," she said firmly. "This is my family, you are my life, everything is perfect." As the night was ending, Christina approached the newlyweds. "I have one last gift for you," she announced. She handed them the keys to a small but beautiful house on the outskirts of Madrid. "It's yours, paid for in full, with a workshop in the back so you can expand the business." Carmen and Victor were speechless. "Christina," Victor said, "we can't accept." "It's not charity," she interrupted. "It's an investment in your future, in my future extended family." She hugged them both. "And besides, a grandmother needs a comfortable place to visit her future grandchildren." Carmen laughed through her tears. "You're already planning grandchildren." "Of course, I'm not getting any younger." As the celebration continued under the stars, Victor looked at his new wife and felt such deep gratitude that it almost overwhelmed him. A year ago, he had been a broken man, burdened with the shame of a past that was not his fault. Now he was a husband, a successful businessman, and part of a family that loved him unconditionally. "What are you thinking about?" Carmen asked, noticing his pensive expression. "How strange life is, how a broken-down Ferrari can change absolutely everything." Carmen smiled. "You know what I think? I think the Ferrari didn't break down by accident. I think fate sent it to our workshop exactly when we needed to find each other." Victor kissed her gently. "If that's true, then I owe fate the biggest debt of my life." No, said Carmen, hugging him. We owe fate the opportunity to start over. What we have built together, that is ours. And as they danced under the stars, surrounded by family and friends, Victor and Carmen knew they had found something that all the money in the world could not buy. They had found true love, and that was all they needed to be infinitely happy. The Serrano workshop in Gonzales had become the most prestigious automotive restoration company in Spain. Carmen had kept the surname Gonzales out of respect for family tradition, but she had insisted that it appear alongside Victor's on all official documents. It was a spring afternoon when Victor heard familiar laughter coming from the garden of his home. Carmen was running after a little 3-year-old girl with curly brown hair and bright eyes like her mother's. "Grandpa Robert! Grandma Chris!" little Elena shouted as she threw herself into her grandparents' arms. Roberto, who now worked as a carpentry supervisor in the workshop, lifted his granddaughter with a smile that lit up his whole face. "My princess, how is the most beautiful girl in all of Madrid? Daddy is teaching me how to fix cars," Elena announced proudly. Christina, who had learned to be a much more relaxed grandmother than she had been as a mother. "Rio, seriously. And what do you think? I like it. But Mom says I can also be a doctor or an artist or whatever I want." "That's right," Carmen said, approaching with one hand on her slightly bulging belly. "You can be whatever makes you happy." Victor came out of the workshop, wiping his hands with the rag he always carried with him. Seeing his family together, he felt that familiar wave of gratitude that accompanied him every day. "How are the preparations for the expansion going?" Christina asked. "Perfect," Victor replied. "The new location in Barcelona will open next month, and Maria is already interviewing specialist mechanics." Maria, now 22 and in her final year of business administration, had become the company's director of operations. Her natural intelligence and ability to handle difficult personalities had made her a key player in the business's success. "How is the mother-to-be feeling?" Roberto asked, pointing to Carmen's belly. "Tired but excited," Carmen replied, taking Victor's hand. "The doctor says everything is going perfectly." "Have you decided on a name yet?" Christina asked. Victor and Carmen exchanged glances. "If it's a boy, he'll be named Eduardo," Victor said softly, "after my father. And if it's a girl, she'll be named Esperanza," Carmen added, "because that's what we gave each other." Esperanza, Roberto, and Christina smiled, understanding the deep meaning behind both names. Elena, who had been listening with the seriousness of small children, raised her hand. "I want a little brother." "Oh," Carmen laughed. "And why is that?" "So we can teach him how to fix cars together." Everyone laughed. Elena had inherited her father's passion for machines, but also her mother's artistic eye. As the family shared dinner in the garden of their home, Victor watched the scene with a feeling of complete fulfillment. His wife, radiant and beautiful, was chatting animatedly with her mother about decorating plans for the baby's room. His father-in-law was playing with Elena, building towers with wooden blocks. His sister-in-law Maria was arriving from work laden with folders, but smiling brightly. "What are you thinking about?" Carmen asked him softly, noticing his contemplative expression. "That all this started with a bet your mother made to humiliate me," he replied. "And now look where we are." Carmen followed his gaze as he watched his family. "You know what I think?" "What?" "That my mother didn't make that bet to humiliate you. I think deep down she already knew you were special. I think she needed an excuse to keep you around long enough for me to fall in love with you." Victor looked at her in surprise. "Do you really think that?" Carmen looked at her mother, who was explaining to Elena how the flowers worked. "My mother has always been smarter than people think and more sentimental than she admits," as if she had sensed they were talking about her. Christina looked up and smiled at them. "What are the lovebirds talking about?" "How grateful we are," Carmen replied sincerely. Grateful that Carmen took Victor's hands, for second chance, for forgiveness, for families that are repaired, for dreams that come true. Christina felt her eyes fill with tears. "I'm the one who should be grateful. You saved me from becoming a bitter and lonely woman." Roberto nodded and gave me the opportunity to be the father I always wanted to be. Elena, who had been half listening. She raised her glass of juice. "Let's toast." Everyone raised their glasses and cups. "What are we toasting, sweetie?" Victor asked. Elena reflected with the seriousness of a miniature philosopher. To families that get fixed like cars, the comparison was so perfect, so innocent, and so profound at the same time that everyone laughed. To families that get fixed, Victor repeated, clinking his glass with Carmen's. And to mechanics who know how to fix hearts, added Carmen. And to mothers who learn to love unconditionally, said Christina. And to fathers who find their way back home, finished Roberto. As the glasses clinked under the starry sky of Madrid, Victor thought about how far he had come. The young mechanic who had accepted an impossible challenge out of wounded pride had become a man who understood that true victory was not in proving his worth, but in building a life full of love. Carmen, who now carried the promise of a new generation in her womb, had learned that true wealth was not inherited, but created day by day with small gestures of love and understanding. And Christina had discovered that the greatest power was not to control others, but to transform herself through love. That night, when everyone went to sleep, Victor and Carmen were left alone in the garden. She leaned against his chest while he gently caressed her belly. "Do you think our children will have an easier life than ours?" Carmen asked. "I don't know," Victor replied honestly, "but they will have something we didn't have at first." "What?" "Parents who truly love each other, grandparents who have learned to forgive, and the certainty that no matter what happens, they will always have a family to support them." Carmen smiled in the darkness. "Do you know what I like most about our story?" "What?" "That it didn't end with "and they lived happily ever after," but with "and they decided to be happy every day." Victor kissed her on the head because that's what true love does. It gives you the strength to choose happiness every day, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. As the stars shone down on the little family that had been born of a challenge and grown through forgiveness, Victor Serrano knew he had found something more valuable than all the Ferraris in the world. He had found his home, and in that home built with love, perseverance, and second chances, they would live happily, not only ever after, but for every day they were blessed to wake up together. Because in the end, that is the only happiness that really matters. The one you choose to create day after day with the people you love, with the as the stars shone down on the little family that had been born of a challenge and grown through forgiveness, Victor Serrano knew he had found something more valuable than all the Ferraris in the world. He had found his home, and in that home, built with love, perseverance, and second chances, they would live happily not only forever, but for every day they were blessed to wake up together. Because in the end, that is the only happiness that really matters. The one you choose to create day after day with the people you love. A year later, when his second son, Eduardo, took his first steps in the same workshop where his father had accepted the challenge that changed their lives, Victor would remember the words Christina had spoken on that fateful day. "If you fix this Ferrari, you marry my daughter." And he would smile because he had done much more than fix a Ferrari. He had fixed an entire family, he had fixed his own broken heart, and he had proven that sometimes, just sometimes, fairy tales do exist. Only they come disguised as impossible challenges, wounded hearts, and the courage to believe that love can conquer all. The story of Victor and Carmen reminds us that social differences cannot defeat true love, that families can heal when there is a willingness to forgive. M.